What's up, everybody? This is another episode of the JTS podcast. My name is Marcus Modi, alongside my partners, Patton Cook and Gabe Jones here. As we took down, it's a little bit of memory lane because we was talking about it before we started on air. Just last year was the last really official game of the NBA calendar year when the Lakers took on the Nets and whatnot before COVID hit. Went 100% full power on us and changed up everything. But hopefully everybody's doing well, still playing it safe as we're past the honeymoon phase, if you will, with COVID-19 and getting on to a little bit nitty gritty in a marriage, if you will, with Corona. But we're gonna go ahead and start off with a little bit of Austin Peay, because the OVC tournament was this past weekend, and unfortunately, both teams, the women and the men, was knocked out in the first round. The women lost to Belmont, I believe it was 64-60, and then the men, they lost to Eastern Kentucky. And actually, I wasn't a little bit shocked on that one, but the OVC winner for the men was a little bit of a shocker, as Morehead State punched their ticket into the NCAA tournament, defeating Belmont, even though Belmont only had 2 losses. Let's go ahead and start with Austin Peay, because they finished 10-10 on the year in the regular season and then ended up getting bounced in the first round. Unfortunately, this was Terry Taylor's last collegiate game. He has no more years of eligibility, and we have all stated multiple times on previous podcasts that this young man will be in the rafters, but it was just sad to see him go out like this. I wanted to get you guys' thoughts on just this game for Terry Taylor and also the career that he's had over these past 4 years.
I'll go first, Gabe, and then I'll let you kind of go second. For me in sports, one thing I love so much is kind of the romanticizing of it. You kind of see the happy endings, the senior getting to make it to the Final Four and get a chance to play for a national championship. Ultimately, for Terry Taylor and his Austin Peay career, we didn't get to see that, and that's pretty heartbreaking for myself. I've kind of followed along with the Terry Taylor journey. I got here at Austin Peay when he got here, so I kind of got to see firsthand as a freshman just how great he was, and he lived up to the hype each and every year. But ultimately, this season was not what he would have hoped for. He came back to win an OVC title. I think if he wanted to, he could be right now in the G League with a basketball team looking to make an NBA roster next season. Except his hope was this season that he could come back with his brothers and Jordan Adams, Chino Paez, a ton of other guys, and look to win an OVC title for Coach Matt Figger. Ultimately, didn't happen this season, and we can get into this in just a little bit, but I think there's a variety of reasons. But one thing we can't say is Terry Taylor is at the very bottom of the list of anything, any blame to fall on, because he was as advertised this season, likely, or actually already won OVC Player of the Year already in the regular season. But ultimately, in tournament time, you need all 5 guys, and you need guys off the bench to come in, and they just ultimately never did get that. Chino Paez did very well. Carlos Paez, Chino, however you want to pronounce it, but he did very well. Had a couple 20-point games this season, but Jordan Adams, one guy we were looking at to make the NBA draft, just never could get a rhythm, and injuries had a lot to do with that this season. Disappointing because very likely we're not going to see a player like Terry Taylor step into the Dunn Center for a long while, because those are kind of once in a decade type players, and ultimately Austin Peay just never did capitalize on a player like that to win the OVC.
Indeed. As you said, Terry Taylor is not a guy that just comes around too often. Not exactly local, but he's from Kentucky, so not too far away. Decided to bring his talents down to Austin Peay and brought his talents. He did. I mean, that dude was a bucket getter, always grabbing rebounds. He finishes top 10 in basically every category, top 5 in pretty much the important categories as far as rebounding, scoring as well. I mean, this guy was everything and more for what Austin Peay could ever ask for. In his final game, dropping 19 points, had 2 steals, a block, 16 rebounds. I mean, he battled his heart out gave the best performance that he could give. But sometimes, I mean, you just can't be a one-man show. It is a team sport for a reason. Unfortunate that Terry Taylor didn't get to see the team success, though he had a lot of individual success. And we hate to see him go, but I wish him the best of luck in all of his future endeavors.
Terry Taylor, through 4 years, had 4 first-team All-OVCs. He won Freshman of the Year, 2-time OVC Player of the Year. He won it this year and last year, back-to-back. And unfortunately, he couldn't get even to the championship game. He couldn't get past the second round in 4 years. He only beat Belmont, I believe, once. He only beat Murray State only once. It was everything that Terry could muster up and do, because he was trying to do. He was trying to get wins. And whenever he went to a post-game interview or an interview in general, it wasn't all about him. It was all about us. And it was just sad to see that they couldn't propel. Like, even though he had plenty of games. I know last year he had like a 27-point game, and he was trying to fight his way to trying to just get to a championship game where the big lights was at. Just couldn't get it done. All-time leading scorer, top 5 in rebounds. He's top 5 in double-doubles. I mean, he is one of those guys. He's going to be one of those 5 guys where you look back down 20 years down the line. It's like, man, this guy could do everything, but we couldn't give him a ring. Why? What went wrong? And that's the questions that he's going to be having for the rest of his life, honestly, because we all believe that he has the potential to get drafted. Right now, he's projected second round, but anything is possible. Because we all know he's going to go to the combine. His numbers could jump up. And if they have a summer league this year, depending on how Corona is, he could get even more looks after the fact and get on an NBA roster. It's just that if you look at his collegiate career, it's like, man, it was so many opportunities. And he was up against NBA talent and did well. But the team success, the guys around him, like these past 2 years, in the preseason, Austin Peay was predicted to win it, the OVC. They didn't come close. It wasn't close this year. Yes, Jordan Adams, it was an injury-filled year, but still, this was supposed to be the top 2 duo in the OVC, and just couldn't get it done.
Yeah, and one thing for me, I know Terry's going to ask how did he not win an OVC? I kind of asked the same sort of question, and the only thing I can really come up is one thing that's been pretty consistent in this Matt Figure era is the consistency on the team, and like the players on the floor year in, year out, it is constantly changes. Rarely have they ever had a starting 5 more than 2 years in a row under Terry's time, whether that be through transfers, whether that be through graduation. There's really nothing Coach Figure can do about that. But I think when you look at teams like Belmont and Murray State, they're building up to OVC titles. They've got a roster that's kind of young. They start them their freshman year, and then that sophomore and junior year, they're back and they're looking to win an OVC. I think that's one thing. That's the only thing I can pick out, because talent on the floor, you look at it night in, night out for Austin Peay. There's not many more talented teams, I think, but just the kind of the cohesion of the guys on the floor, it just was never there. And of course, with practices kind of being cut down because of COVID, they just never could get the rhythm going. And they thought that Eastern Kentucky might have been a good matchup for them. That's probably been their best matchup this season. But ultimately, EKU popped up. And one thing I would like to say is shout out to Morehead State. Their head coach is from my mom's hometown down there in Betsy Lane, Kentucky. Would say he'd come on the podcast. So I'm going to see if we can get him on maybe someday and talk about this run. But it's a heck of a run for Morehead, and they've kind of been at the top all year long. And no one really expected them to beat Belmont, who was kind of the media darling here in Nashville.
Hey, Patton, let's do that after. Let's do that after their NCAA run. We don't want to try to spoil anything for them.
No, yeah.
I gotta let them be locked in and focused. That's another point I did want to say. Morehead State is another good example of keeping their guys together and bringing them up, because Morehead State, that took a lot of time for them. They still wouldn't know just, oh, we're going to be really cold this year. No, it took some hard work and some not the best years in the first couple of years, these past couple of years, to where they propelled themselves to an OVC title, something that hasn't been done in quite some time for Morehead State.
Indeed. I was never afraid of the War Eagles as an Austin P governor, but good to see them, make some noise. Hopefully they make some noise in the NCAA tournament, and that'll just bring some more attention to these lower Division I schools, and maybe they will bring more talent. I mean, we've seen guys come out of these schools to go into the NBA. Of course, most notably a John Morant, a guy that went second in the draft. A guy I'm happy that he ended up coming to Memphis, so he brings us more joy. But as said, Terry Taylor, one of the greats, one of the best that we've seen in all of OVC history. Just to be quite honest, just to be quite frank. So Austin P, I'm not sure where they go from there. Hopefully coach figures out something as far as getting in some young guys, and maybe he can keep these teams consistent and try to go for something in the coming years.
One final thing for me, Marcus. I think we might talk about the women's team and kind of their future ahead. What do you guys think about Belmont? That kind of all season long, they were pretty much surefire to get into the NCAA tournament. Now they're not going to be an automatic bid with them losing, not winning the OVC. Marcus, do you think they're making it in? For me, when you look at the schedule, they haven't really played anyone as of note. They kind of struggled down the stretch, and that's one thing kind of the committee looks at. Are you peaking at the right time, or are you coming in hot? And right now they're playing. They're not playing their best basketball right now.
Yes, I do think that Belmont is going to get in. I actually was going to ask this question before we had moved on, so you just beat me to it. But I think Belmont is going to get in. I mean, they only had 2 losses throughout the whole entire year. Yeah, their non-conference schedule wasn't as top tier as other schools, but also you got to realize a lot of times they had to stay within a few hours from each other, from Nashville, if you will. So they couldn't just go out and play a lot of teams just due to COVID regulations. But once again, also what was strange for them is they had an injury bug 3 games right before the end of the season. They had 2 of their top guys fall out of the rotation. So everything was really questionable. So everybody was already throwing that white flag, they was throwing the red flags and white flags for Belmont. But when they got to the tournament, yeah, they struggled, but they somehow still found a way to get themselves back into the championship. So I think that actually will help them out a little bit within the committee. And then also in that championship game, they was down double digits and had to muster their way back. They fought hard, but they just couldn't close it out. But I still think they'll get a nod.
I agree. And I think one thing that does help them is whenever that year that had John Morant and Dylan Windler in the OVC, where we had 2 OVC teams make it into the NCAA tournament. Both of them won. And I think there's something to be said. I think the committee takes that into account when you do get the kind of favor. They didn't end up winning the OVC that year. John Morant did. They gave Belmont the nod, and they ended up winning it and winning a game, I should say.
One more thing is, too, they was a top 25 team for majority of the year. That'd be pretty bold for the committee just to say, since they're not in the top 25, we're not even going to give them a nod at all. That'd be a pretty bold one, because they was in that 22 to 25 range literally all year long. So they was getting the recognition that they deserved. It's just that they fell off at a weird time. So let's go ahead and move on to the women's side, because we talked about it just a little bit, but Coach David Mitlick, they announced a couple of days ago that Mitlick was not getting his contract renewed and he's been with the team for 7 seasons. Did not have a losing record at all, either non-conference or conference. So throughout his entire 7 seasons, he did not have a losing record. But unfortunately, Gerald Harrison just thought that it was best to move into a different direction. I wanted to get you guys' thoughts on it, and what did you think that was this the right move, or should he have gotten at least a couple more years?
Right or wrong, I think that they were just trying to move into a different direction. Austin P did have success, a lot of success in the OVC, yet whenever it got to tournament time, pretty much no success at all. Coach Mitlick did not get a win in the tournament, never advanced past the first round, which is unfortunate because he was in a lot of these games. I know particularly last year, Austin P had a chance to advance. They just came up short. And sometimes that's just how the ball bounces. Not really much you can do with that. He did have a lot of players who were just, blue collar, hard playing gals. And he had a major talent in Ariel Gonzalez Varner over the last few years. But just not enough to, go forward in the tournament. And I think that is what Austin P is looking for. Now, will they receive that success next year or anywhere in the immediate future? Who knows? It depends on who the new coach is. It depends on who they decide to bring in as far as talent to put out on the floor. But I believe that the girls that Coach Mitlick did coach enjoyed him very much as a coach. He was hard on them, made them, showed that they were leaders in the classroom and on the floor. So he will be missed. He will be missed. But, Austin Peay is just trying to move on into a new direction.
Yeah, this is an interesting one for me. I kind of, as we've gotten to do some of the games, Marcus and Gabe as well, I did a sideline game one time with Coach Midlick, and he gave me a pretty hard time on one of the halftime interviews. Came up and kind of said that was wrong of him, and I really did respect that afterwards. It was a funny moment in the moment anyway, but this is just my little personal tidbit on Coach Midlick. One thing I would like to echo on Gabe is that every player that's played for him, they've played 100% every time. And that just shows that they respect him and they respect what he does, because ultimately he's looking to turn these young women into grown women in the real world, and being hard and tough on them because he wants the best for them, I think is something that you can definitely say about Coach Midlick. One thing I will say about Austin Peay kind of moving on is I'm going to give a bit of an example of something that's over my right shoulder here on our little Zoom call, and that's the Vanderbilt Commodores, and that is whenever they let go of Kevin Stallings, the head basketball coach for the men's side. And the whole point was that we were tired of just making it into the NCAA tournament. We want to win a game or two and make it into the Sweet 16. Well, look at us now. We are having a tough time making it out of the first round of the SEC tournament, much less of the NCAA tournament. So I think you got to be careful what you wish for sometimes, because if Austin Peay gets his hire wrong, you go from being right at the middle to the front half of the table of the OVC to near the bottom, and that's where you have a tough time getting out of it, getting good recruits in. Of course, Clarksville's a really good hotbed for some hot talent on the both boys and girls basketball, but I think Austin Peay has to be really diligent on this hire. And one thing you can say about the AD here as of recently is he's gotten his hires pretty much right. He hired Hudspeth, got Matt. He didn't hire Matt Figger, I don't believe. I don't think, but have hired a couple new head football coaches, and I think he's hit on both of them. So the blueprint has been there for him to hire good coaches, but they have got to be extra careful here, because although you want to be at the top, you could very well easily, with just a slight mistake, you're going to be at the bottom for quite some time.
Yeah, that's a great point for me. All it can take is just that one decision, because that one decision can either benefit you, because it's just, for instance, like with football, when the Healy left, you brought in Hudspeth, boom, you got a championship. or where it could be one move where you're right there, you're really close, and then you're just at the bottom of the barrel and trying to rebuild instead of restoring. That's the thing. There's two different types of ways when you kind of make these decisions. Are you going to try to rebuild, or are you just trying to restore your team to propel them to get a championship? And we're not the guys. I'm not the guy in the chair to make that decision. We've all had great memories with Coach Millick. Coach Millick, he was focused on his players, no doubt, throughout his entire tenure. He had a lot of former players come back and be grad assistants, helping them coaching on the sidelines. It's just really extremely tough that through these 7 seasons, not getting a lot of wins in the OVC tournament is the reason why he bounced. It's not just because he wasn't the best throughout the entire season. It was just more so towards the crunch time moments. And it seemed like these past 3 years, it would be those crunch time moments where they just couldn't get the ball, like I said, get the ball to bounce their way, or one thing that went wrong here, and they're out the tournament. And just to be honest, it's a make or miss league, just plain and simple. So whether you have the top tier coach or you don't have the best coach, if you have the right players on your team, if you're getting the right recruits, then you might be set. You just never know. But we wish the best for Coach Millick. Didn't know that he was a former standout at Christian Brothers High School. That's a little note for all the people listening from Memphis. Yeah.
Yeah, he does love Memphis. I had a few times to talk with him about it. He does love Memphis, so I do wish him the best in his future endeavors. One of his players, I mentioned her before, Ariel Gonzalez-Varner, she is going to be invited to try out for the Puerto Rico women's basketball national team. Of course, the Olympics coming up, so maybe she makes the team, and that'll be some more women's basketball that we'll have to watch and root for. So good luck to her in her future endeavors as well.
Absolutely. I think that'd be awesome. And just as my brief stint in kind of watching women's basketball, there are very few ladies that I've seen as tall as Ariel. So, I mean, that's something she's got against her. And at her time at Austin Peay, she was a real force, especially in her junior and senior season. She kind of elevated her play right when they needed her. But echo all the kind of sentiments to Coach Midlick. He's going to land on his feet. He's a very good basketball coach, just didn't break it here. And like Marcus said, it's sports is a game of fine margins, and just that one bounce doesn't go your way, you're ultimately going to be out of a job. But he's going to do great in whatever the aspect. And I would like to say one more thing. There's a good chance maybe in 2 or 3 years time that we will have new head coaches on the men's side as well. I know Coach Figure's contract is coming to an end here pretty soon. The expectations that Austin Peay wants for that team is, I think, just as high as the women's program, just because of the history it's had with Dave Luce. So it's sports is a competitive industry, as we're starting to find out here, even in the college aspect and in the pros as well. But you get paid the big bucks for stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a long tenure before Coach Millick gets another job, but we wish the best of luck to Coach Millick, and then also, once again, best of luck to Terry Taylor as he moves on from his collegiate career. When we come back, we're going to hit on the UFC, and then we're going to give you the results of these guys' NBA All-Star draft. They don't know who came out on top, but I do. So I'm going to announce that in just one moment. We'll be right back here with more Just Talking Sports.
Yo, what's up? So last Saturday, March the 6th, we had UFC 259. It was slated to be a great card, and great card, question mark, good card, absolutely. We had some interesting fights. We'll start off with the first fight. Alexander Rakic defeated Thiago Santos, won by unanimous decision. Both these guys are heavyweights. Thiago Santos, his most notable fight was against John Jones, where it went 5 rounds. He blew out, I believe, both of his knees. Yeah. It was even questionable did he win that fight versus John Jones? But of course, John Jones went with the win, a guy that's pretty much undefeated, recognized as undefeated in the UFC. But Rakic comes away with the win. Hadn't anything going against that. I think Rakic won the fight.
I agree. One thing I would say is this fight was a lot of prompt coming into it was going to be the fight of the night, because these are two guys that just throw absolute caution into the wind, and if they get knocked out, so be it. But these two guys are kind of known for their punching power, but a very conservative fight from both of them. And that's kind of usually what you see from some of these heavy hitters coming into it when two of them come together. They're not used to really having the threat of getting knocked out by one punch, and these two guys had that exact same kind of danger, so they played it safe. I thought we saw something from Santos that we hadn't normally seen, and that was a conservative game plan against John Jones. I thought he threw caution in the wind. Ultimately, those knees that you were talking about just didn't get him through, but not a terrific fight. But I think to start off a main card, it wasn't too bad of a fight. Went into the judges' scorecards, and for once, I don't have a real gripe with the judges in this fight.
Oh, just know it's coming, my friend.
Oh.
It's coming. Moving on to the next fight. So, Islam, y'all gonna have to forgive me for this butchering of the last name, but Makhachev, I believe is his last name. Defeated Drew Dober, a guy who's smiley. He has a D-bag haircut, but it's okay. This dude is built. He's bulky. They made it to round 3 where Islam stopped him with an arm. They called it an arm triangle. Basically, he put his shoulder into his neck. Now, from round 1, round 2, round 3, Islam just straight up took him to the ground, just held him like a bear. Now, Islam, he comes from the camp of Khabib Nurmagomedov, and man, he did his best impression of him. Got the shaved head, he got the beard like Khabib, and he looked like him inside the octagon. Once he got him into the middle of the octagon, round 3, it was pretty much over.
Yeah, I agree. Islam, that ground game, that's one thing. If you want to, you might not like it, but that ground game is really a great tool for any fighter to have in the UFC, because I know we're going to talk about it for later on in a minute, but you get a guy on the ground in the middle of the ring, they don't have no great takedown. I mean, not just takedown defense, but just great defense on the ground in general. They're stuck there all night long. And when you're breathing, all you're going to be breathing in when you're at the bottom is hot air, because somebody's going to be laying right on top of you, and there ain't nothing you can do about it.
I agree. And I think a lot of question is, which would you rather be? Would you rather be the knockout artist, or would you rather be a guy like Khabib who can kind of just wear you down and strangle you in the second round? And to me, what we're starting to see more and more of it, if you're a grade A top wrestler, it tops the knockout power, because it's a lot harder to get to find that perfect punch to knock you out than just to get a simple takedown, and then you can do your damage from there, and you got all the time in the world. Especially like we're talking about, if it's in the middle of the ring. This fight was never close. From minute 1 in the first round, it went immediately to the ground, and we saw pretty much 15 minutes more of that throughout the fight. So for Drew Dober, kind of another tough loss for him, but this is starting to be another one of these kind of Khabib guys that are starting to fly up the rankings, and I'm not sure that many guys are going to face him, because he is just making quick work of these fights, and he's not taking much time at all in it, only losing one fight. But since that loss, he's been absolutely dominating the UFC. Khabib was in the arena that night, so I don't know what they're feeding these Russian boys over there at the camp, but they are absolutely dominating the UFC right now.
Hey, they be fighting Cubs since little kids,
that's
man.
True.
you gotta watch out for them, especially in Khabib camp.
If you've ever seen Dagestani basketball, they're basically wrestling while they're playing basketball. It's really not much basketball being played. I mean, basketball, you think you dribble, you shoot. These folks doing takedowns, scoring takedowns, like the refs are like, nice, like great takedown, and then they'll just throw the ball at the backboard. Just like a mental exercise, but it's insane. Those dudes are nuts, man. Moving on to the next fight. All right, so let's get into it. So
I just want to say, Gabe, this was the most controversial fight out of all of them. This was the controversial fight out of the whole entire night.
Controversial ending, definitely. Aljamain Sterling going against Peter Yan. Now, Peter, he was the champion. They had a pretty much back and forth. They had somewhat of a back and forth fight. Peter Yan, he was starting to control it going into these last rounds, but Peter Yan actually ends up losing this fight. So at this point in the fight, Peter Yan has Aljamain Sterling down. He's trying to kind of like figure out what to do with him. He talks over to his corner. I believe that the announcer says that he asked. He was like, "Yo, should I hit him? Should I kick him? What should I do?" And they were like, "Go ahead, like, kick him." And he ends up kneeing Aljamain Sterling in the head, concussing him, and that's not legal.
Okay, so one thing. One guy said a chest punch, but what Daniel Cormier said, because he had Khabib sitting right next to him, he said another guy told him to kick him. And then when he did the kick, whoever told him to kick him said, yeah. So that was the somewhat questionable thing within his camp, saying one of them, we heard one of them say chest. It was in English, like just a chest punch. But somebody in Russian said kick him. So, and Peter, he went with the kick, and that ultimately cost him the match. And the bad part for me was that Yan was winning this whole fight the entire time. Yeah. He like if it went all five, I think it was a unanimous decision that Yan was going to win. Because Sterling, for me, he was trying to fight this fight like it was a 3-round fight and not a 5-round fight. And by that 4th round, he was exhausted, and he didn't have any gas in him. And it was times where he just left his guard down in the 4th round. It was times where he was just eating punches, and it was just like, all right, we was really just waiting on Jan's finishing punch, but it ultimately was his illegal knee that cost him.
I don't want to accuse anyone of anything here, but I think Sterling knows exactly what he was doing in that position. I think that position he was in that position for, I think, no exaggeration, 10 seconds before Yan ended up kind of delivering that knee to the head that ultimately got him disqualified. Just because I'd never seen much of anything like that, because Sterling had his hands on Yan, and that is one thing. If the hands are on the ground, that usually means that the knee is on the ground as well. That's just kind of one thing that I thought, because for me at the first angle looking at it, I thought his knees was off the ground, his hands were off the ground, were off the mat. So I thought the knee was completely legal. And then that second look, his knee was clearly down, and I think he was trying to bait Yan into getting that knee, because that was the only way he was going to win that fight. There was no chance he was going to make it into that 5th round without being at least knocked out or finished on the ground. Like you were talking about, Marcus, he was gassed by the 3rd round. He was those 2 rounds, he went pedal to the metal, and the hope was for him that he could finish Peter by that point. But Yan, he kind of just played the waiting game and did just enough in that 3rd and 4th round to really start to control the fight. Sterling, he put on the acting. I was in drama in Chokar in high school. I know acting when I see one. To me, that was exactly it. He got hit in the head very, very hard, but there were punches in that fight where he got hit harder than that, and he didn't make as much of a I don't know what you want to call it, but I just think Sterling knows what he was doing there. It worked out for him. He's got the title. He's going to have to face Peter. I would have to say again, there's no way Dana doesn't make that rematch for me, but I don't know. I think it's such a harsh. I would like to see this in WWE. In the WWE, I know this UFC fans are about to roll over in their grave. Switch off now if you want to. But if there is a disqualification, the other guy doesn't get the belt. It's just kind of left up for grabs. It's vacated, and then they fight again to have the title. I don't think Sterling should be able to get the title because he got kicked in the head and you feel sorry for him. So give him the title. Call me a neutral. Call me a I don't know what you want to call me, but that is just one thing I'd like to say. Sterling did what he did have to do to get the title. He did it, and congratulations to him, I guess. You can tell how excited I am.
Fight fan.
Gabe,
what's wrong with you?
One thing I want to say is, well, now with this DQ, it almost going to be set up a trilogy fight because I think Jan is going to come back with a vengeance. He probably going to try to knock out Sterling in the next one, and then we might have a trilogy to try to break the tie. I wish that Jan didn't have this DQ because the next fight that I was going to want to see was against Triple C, Henry Cejudo. I was ready for that one because we saw that he retired, but you know how these UFC guys are. They just want the dollars. And Dana White, can you stop with this, making it seem like they're really going to be retired when they just want more money? That's all. That's another word for it. Yeah, I'm retired, so give me an extra $8 million. That's what it sounds like it's coming out from these UFC fighters. But Triple C is supposed to be coming back, and I don't want Triple C to fight Sterling. I wanted Jan to fight Triple C. Because we saw, like I said earlier, we saw with Sterling, he ain't gonna be able to get Triple C like that.
I mean,
for all I care, Henry Cejudo should fight Francis Ngannou. I am the least Henry Cejudo fan I think on the planet. I just want him knocked out. Whoever's got to do it, do it. I just let it happen.
Francis? Why? That's cruel, dude. Why?
No, I just his retirement, his whole act.
He pulled a Conor McGregor. What do you mean?
No, well, he didn't do it like Conor. I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm not a Henry Cejudo guy. I think his whole persona is just cringe. And if he wants to come back, great. Let him fight. I guess. Who am I to kind of ruin that moment for him?
Indeed. Well, we definitely will see a rematch. Dana said that he's going to put that in the works. I'm excited to see it. As we said, Peter Yan was taking it to Sterling at the end right there. He just had an unfortunate DQ. But I am with you, Pat, and I was wondering, because this is the first time I believe in UFC history where this has happened in a title fight. And just to lose the title that way, it is unfortunate. But to win the title that way is also unfortunate because you do work hard to get these wins to beat up the other guy. And whenever you're just kind of like gifted the title, I mean, you do have the title. That is great. But the way that you won it, it's kind of like, like Aljamain Sterling, whether you think it was an acting job or not, he basically like threw that thing to the floor. He didn't seem too happy about it. But hey, I mean, he could be at home in his bed just hugging this thing like, baby, you're mine, my precious.
I will say one thing in Sterling's defense. He should have no kind of reason to go back into the fight. It was an illegal knee. He got hit in the head, and he was definitely concussed. That definitely didn't help him for the rest of the fight. I agree with him. There's no reason why he should have to fight again and ultimately kind of compromise his already compromised state. So I'll say that about Sterling. There's no reason for him to go back into it. So that's my one defense of that fight.
All right, moving on. So the last two fights, these are the main events. For the first one, we got to see the GOAT of women's fight sports, Miss Lioness Amanda Nunes. She defeats Megan Anderson. It was just quick work. Armbar, round 1, 203 in the fight. Golly, I mean, this lady is just she's a tank, and everyone else is like I don't know, sand, clay, putty, whatever you want. She just steamrolls over everybody. Guys, did you look away from the screen at all whenever her fight started? Because I mean, if you didn't keep your eyes just wide open, you would have missed it.
She only got hit twice. This is like the third fight where she's only got hit less than 5 times in the past, 3 years? Just being honest, like she is the best pound for pound. It's no stopping her. She doesn't have any weaknesses. I'm sorry. She's just different. She's just built different. And so was I surprised by this? Not really. She was the heavy favorite, and I don't know who can stop her. Just plain and simple.
I don't think there anyone that can stop her. At this point, she's literally getting paid to train, because I'm sure that she trains for these fights. Like she's in the gym, working out, doing whatever, just trying to better her different skills. But it's not even competition at this point. Patton, did she break a sweat? Because I was looking at it, I was like, she didn't even sweat. She didn't sweat.
Well, yeah, she's kind of running into the same sort of thing Khabib has, and he's running out of competition. And for her, she's not getting hit like Marcus is talking about. And in her division right now, there's really no up and coming fight that you're looking at and saying, man, I'd love to see it. The only fight I would like to see, and that's already happened already, is Valentina Shevchenko. I'm a big fan of her. I like her fights in her division. She's 2 or 3 weight classes below of what Amanda Nunes is, so they'd have to kind of catch weight somewhere. I'd like to see that fight. I don't know if it'll end up happening or not, but that is the only fight I am interested in seeing. I am at this point for Amanda, as tough as it is, I'm not going to pay a pay-per-view for her to be the main event, because that main event is going to be over in 30 seconds. So, I mean, it's just a tough situation for her. I mentioned Henry Cejudo. One thing on Twitter was that's a possible matchup, Amanda Nunes and Henry Cejudo for the equality belt. So that's I'd pay for that. I'd pay for that pay-per-view, Dana White, if you're listening. So that is one thing I will say about Amanda Nunes. You kind of feel bad for her at this point, because she's making it look so easy that it can't hurt her resume or kind of her aura, but it's just no threat for her right now at her division. And I think there's something the UFC is going to have to talk about, because right now, Megan Anderson, whenever she walked into that octagon, she was as white as a ghost. And I think she kind of saw her future ahead of her, and that future happened pretty quickly.
Indeed.
I'm sorry, Gary. It's just, it's nothing really you can say. I don't know who can even stand a chance to. Can somebody get her past the first round?
I could probably run around. I could run around the octagon for 5 minutes and that's
not gonna work. That's not gonna work, Patty. Because she gonna stop you at a certain point. You can't just be running around like she's running around in the grocery store. That's not gonna work.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
So I don't know. I don't know. Because how long are we gonna wait till she get past the second round? Is a real question.
There's no one there. Like we said, there's no one there for her, and she can't move to another. Like usually some guys, if it's no real threat for him, like Mighty Mouse, whenever he did it, Demetrius Johnson, he left. He went over to one fighting, and he kind of found some matchups. UFC, it's got the best women's division or women's talent in all of the world. So there's really nowhere for her to go other than to keep collecting these checks and keep being a mom. I brought her baby in the octagon. That was probably the best action of the fight, was trying to get her baby to calm down in the UFC ring. So
she might have tougher times at home taking care of the child than she do in the octagon.
Easily.
And that's, like, just thinking about that. Just thinking about that. She have tougher times with her little child than in the octagon. In the past, 3 years for real?
Yeah, I think once we saw her clear out Chris Cyborg as easily as she did, we were like, well, that's it. That's it. It's nothing else that can be done. She's a champ. She's gonna hold on to those 2 belts for a very long time, unless they allow some I guess gender bending to happen in the UFC, which I seriously doubt. So otherwise, she'll be holding on to those belts until she wants to just give them away.
Let's get into the main event.
All right, for the main event, Jan Blachowicz holding the title, going against Israel Adesanya, who holds the title already in the middleweight division. Izzy, he moved up to light heavyweight to see if he could become the 5th guy to hold the reign of being a champ in the UFC, and he just fell short. So let's take it round by round. So round 1, The judges, they scored that 10-9, whether in Izzy or Blankowicz's way. I believe two of the judges had a yawn. What did you guys see from round one? Marcus?
I agree with him. I think Jan controlled the entire fight. I think starting in round one for me, it was just that Jan really didn't show a lot of weaknesses for me in this entire fight. And Israel was trying to find one. So you saw him trying to attack the legs early, maybe get the legs weak so he could try something else. But hey, you got to give credit to Jan. He is no slouch at all. And for me, I think for me, I had said Jan took round one, but I had Israel taking round two. That was my look on it.
I'll say this about round one. I think that was Israel, without a doubt, his best round because Jan at the very beginning didn't know exactly what to do with Adesanya. Kind of that length is something he doesn't see very often. It's really Israel and John Jones. Those are the two guys that have got the kind of reach advantage that those two have. There's really no one else. So for me, that whole round one for Jan was kind of feeling his way out, trying to figure out how he wanted to attack Israel Adesanya. And one thing I did like you saying there, Marcus, was there are no weaknesses that we saw from Jan in this fight. He even took Israel to the ground, and we haven't seen that very often from at all in the middleweight for Israel Adesanya. So that was interesting to see. You've kind of known Blachowicz to kind of be more of the heavy hitter, to be kind of more the knockout power, but he showed there he's just as good as on the ground, and he can control you there as well.
The one thing, that's why I said I think that Jan took round one is because he was being patient, but he was being extremely tactical in round one. So that's why I think the judges was going more in his favor. I think he was right. It was like 10-9, I think, for Jan, right, Gabe?
Yeah, I'm sitting here looking at the scorecards.
Okay.
It was 2 10-9s and 3 10-9s, unanimous 3 10-9s.
Yeah, because I was like, I think also it was just him being extremely tactical. It's somewhat, being patient and tactical sometimes is not common, especially for somebody that's going against Adesanya. Because Adesanya, he can, if you be patient, he can get aggressive. If you try to be tactical and slip up, that's it. You can be down for the count. So it was just, like I said, it was really no weaknesses for Jan. And then as we got closer and closer, I think the size mattered to the end.
Indeed. Adesanya, he notably said out loud that he didn't really move up in weight. I think he came in weighed in like in the 190s. I think 198 is what his weigh-in was. And he could have lost weight and Jan could have gained weight from weigh-in to the fight. So round two, two of those went to Jan as well. One went to Izzy. Round three, that's the one where Izzy won 2 10-9 rounds. I believe how I felt about the fight up until really the end, but especially the round three before we got into the championship rounds, round 4 and 5, it was kind of like a balloon, like an already inflated balloon, and you're just blowing in it. And the balloon is just getting bigger and bigger, and you're just waiting for it to pop. And we didn't really see a pop because both of these guys were respectful. I believe Jan was respectful of Izzy's skill, his extreme skill in all facets of the game, but Izzy was also respectful of Jan's weight and his power. And it wasn't until round 4 and 5 whenever Jan started getting the takedowns and started using his weight more. Patton, did you see something different?
No, same sort of thing. Coming into this fight, I really wanted Izzy to win the fight just because I am a big believer in the John Jones and Israel Adesanya fight. And with this loss, we've heard John Jones say exactly that he doesn't see a point in the fight, and whether true or untrue that statement should be for John. I think there's something to be said because John is bigger, faster, better at pretty much everything that Izzy does, in my opinion. And we've seen that, whether that be on the picograms of steroids or not. I don't know. I'm not going to comment on that. But For Izzy, this was a fight to me was going to be the true test on whether or not he could handle John Jones. I think that fight is over now. We've already heard from Dana, or we've seen from Dana White that whatever happens in this Francis Ngannou-Stipe Miocic fight, John Jones is going to fight the winner for that. So didn't love seeing Izzy not end up winning this fight, but for Jan, I think this is another kind of like with Amanda Nunes. You're just looking at the light heavyweight division, and there isn't a whole lot there. And that was the whole reason for Dana White sending up Israel Adesanya to light heavyweight, was to try and spice up the division with John Jones leaving. But ultimately, he did not get that outcome because there's just a clear level above everybody else in that division.
For me, Gabe, I thought Adesanya you could see the fatigue in him in those championship rounds that we wasn't really accustomed to seeing in the middleweight division. And I think the size played a factor. Well, am I saying if he bulked up a little bit more would have been more in his favor? We don't know that. But we could also tell that once Jan did those takedowns, it wasn't much that Israel could do in that fourth and fifth round, because one takedown and he was on the mat in the middle of the ring for majority of the rounds. It ain't much you can do when you're on the ground doing nothing, trying to get back up. And I also too, I wanted to see John Jones versus Israel, but I don't know, man. Seeing how easily Jan took down Israel, I think John Jones would do the exact same thing and just control the ground game for him. And we all know that we wouldn't want to see no ground game between those two. We wanted to see them just slug it out. But that's a weakness probably potentially for Israel with guys that are bigger than him. And John Jones would just be too big for him. Like 15 to 20 pounds is too much for Israel right now.
Indeed. I think that's where we saw a way for Jan to win if he was to take Israel to the ground. And that's what he did at the ends of the fourth and fifth round. Now, the issue where the controversy comes in is just the scoring. They scored a 10-8. Two of the judges scored 10-8 at the end of the round. Dana didn't like it. Other UFC fighters didn't like it. I don't believe it was a 10-8 round, because a 10-8 means that you basically got your tail kept. It wasn't a quick fight. And I think that it was close period. I mean, pretty much the whole fight.
I agree. Well, it really wasn't a whole lot there for me. Just the same sort of thing with UFC judges. What do you expect at this point? I mean, it's a broken system, and until we fix it, we're going to have instances like this. Luckily, it didn't end up influencing the fight, because I think Jan would have won either way with a 10-9 or 10-8 anyway. But disgraceful. I agree.
Yeah, I think it was 10-9s. I don't think it should have been 10-8s at all. But I think, like I said, Jan was a clear winner. Let's go ahead and move forward, because we got to get these results from the last podcast. If you listened in, we had these two guys did a NBA All-Star draft, and the way we did the scoring was these guys drafted their guys, and we went off the point system. Well, for the winner of the JTS All-Star Draft is going to be Gabriel Jones. He defeated Patton Cook. The score was 180 to 140. Unfortunately for Patton, he was hoping that he had picked Giannis. And if Patton would have had Giannis, actually, Gabe would have only won by 5 points. So that was won. Yeah, but it would have been close. That's the only difference. But congratulations.
I would like to make a comment.
Go ahead.
A big LeBron guy, myself is. I am officially disregarding LeBron James forever. The mail-in performance I saw from him on the All-Star game, absolutely disgraceful. I mean, did he even play in the second half? Another one, James Harden. What are you doing out there? I've seen step-back three-pointers from you all season long. All of a sudden, you turn in to bloody Cliff Paul out there. I mean, I couldn't believe what I was seeing on the floor there. The entire game, I was thinking I had Giannis, and whenever he was just running up the floor, dunking on everybody, I was like, awesome, I've got this thing secured. Of course, Gabe, he picked my arch nemesis, Steph Curry. I mean, he's stabbing me in the heart once again. Shout out my pick on Steph Curry winning the three-point contest. But Gabe, a clear winner. I think he somehow stole Giannis from me. I swear on my life that I picked him, but I have it on my piece of paper. I didn't pick him. I don't know how. I don't know why I thought I picked him, but fair enough.
Hey, look, all I want to say is, as a winner, look, man, I'm just good at picking teams. Look, this is what I do, baby. Know what I mean? Look, maybe I'm not the player, but I can GM some things together, especially whenever I have nothing but all-stars to choose from, I guess. So we'll take the win. Thank you, Giannis. Shout out Giannis having a perfect game from the field, and shout out Steph hitting 50-foot bombs from threes just the entire game. And did you have Dame? I'm not sure if you had Dame or not, but
you had Dame too. I mean,
shout out Damian Lillard doing Dame time, Steph tossing the assist, pointing to the watch. You know what time it is. Bangers. Shout out for Team LeBron drafting him. So there you go, your boy. Burnt by your boy. We appreciate you.
Hey, man, because also you forgot about Bradley Beal. That was a quiet. It was like 26 points. I believe Gabe had 320. He had a 35-point score at 28, 26, 22. Yeah, it was a lot of scoring for Gabe, unfortunately. Yeah. I'm sorry, Buddy Patton, but hey,
James Harden, Luka Doncic, LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, and Kyrie Irving, you're all dead to me. Those were my top picks, and they absolutely screwed me over. I mean, you look at that list, you're thinking, that's 200 points easily right there. Here I am, egg on my face. Gabe, the winner. What can you do?
Yeah, I think 3 of those guys combined for like 22 points.
Unbelievable.
Like Kawhi, LeBron, and Luka, I think combined for like just 22 points.
Good job, guys. Good job. Oh, before we move on to anything else, I wanted to hit dunk contest. All right, just real quick on the scoring. Cassius Stanley, did he not have the best dunk of the night?
Yes.
Did he not have the lowest score of the night?
Yes.
What is going on?
Former dunkers, all former dunkers. That's all I'm gonna say. It was all former dunkers, and he had the lowest. I don't know. I guess he made it too easy. This is the problem that we have with nobody wanting to do the dunk contest.
Call me a casual, but I do not remember Josh Smith doing anything in the NBA, and he's got the gall to go up there and penalize a rookie like that. And Cassius Stanley gave him an 8 for that dunk. I couldn't believe it. All those guys up there. I mean, I can't believe it. And like you said, that's why we don't get LeBron James and Zion Williamson in the dunk contest. It's an absolute joke. But the other festivities, I thoroughly enjoyed. My Steph Curry pick, and then I'm always a big fan of the knockout. So that skills challenge with Sabonis winning it, that was fun. I'm glad we had the All-Star on Sunday.
Hey, Gabe was correct on Chris Paul blowing it in the first round. So Gabe got another one right on that one. But Sabonis, it was good seeing Sabonis win it. Steph. Hey, shout out to Mike Conley. It's another thing I wanted to say. Mike Conley coming in late and dropping 28 points, and it was 25 in the 3-point contest. That's a sniper from Memphis. Yeah, I said it. Shout out Mike Conley. We give kudos to Mike over here. Great job for Mike, even though you was a runner-up, but you also went up against the greatest shooter of all time. That's unfortunate, but kudos to Mike Conley. I hope everybody enjoyed the All-Star weekend and this episode as well. The next one we might talk about a little bit of free agency to mess with Sir Patton, because it's been a lot of moves and whatnot. But he gonna hold that emotion for the next one, because it ain't looking too good for his Titans. But thank y'all for watching, listening to another episode of the JTS podcast.